right, so could we actually pay off the national debt with Bitcoin? It's kind of crazy, right? Like the U.S. debt is over $35 trillion. It feels like every time you turn around, it's getting bigger.
Yeah, it's a pretty huge number, and it's definitely growing really fast. Like, just to give you an idea, it took the U.S. over 200 years to hit that first trillion in debt, and now we're adding another trillion every 3 months. It's wild to think how much those interest payments are costing us. 76% of income tax revenue in June went straight to interest.
Wow, okay, so how does Bitcoin even fit into all of this?
Well, we're diving into this article by Dennis Frank, a finance and crypto expert, published on cryptokraken.com. It's called Paying Off the National Debt with Bitcoin, a Viable Solution or Speculative Fantasy. And that's exactly what we're going to try and figure out today. This idea of using Bitcoin for the national debt actually came from former President Trump. He had this idea of a crypto check for every American.
A crypto check? What is that?
Well, basically, it's giving everyone Bitcoin, hoping the value would go way up over time. If that happened, then the government could use that Bitcoin to pay off parts of the debt. It's a pretty bold idea for sure. It's definitely something you could see coming from Trump with his love of tech and keeping the U.S. on top in finance.
Okay, I see how it connects to the national debt now. But why would we use Bitcoin? Why not just invest in the stock market or real estate or something like that?
That's where Bitcoin is really unique. People call it digital gold because there's a limited supply of it. Only 21 million Bitcoins will ever exist. Because of that, it's a deflationary asset. The U.S. dollar, the government can just print more whenever they want. That means more dollars floating around, leading to inflation and making our savings worth less, and it gets harder to pay back debt.
So you're saying Bitcoin could actually protect us from inflation and help with that growing national debt problem?
Exactly. There's actually a proposal in Congress right now that's connected to this. Senator Cynthia Lummis has introduced the Bitcoin Act. It wants to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve and gradually buy 1 million Bitcoins over 5 years and hold on to them for at least 20 years.
Hold on. So the government would be spending our tax dollars to buy Bitcoin and then just hold on to it?
That's the idea. It's like a really long-term investment plan. The thinking is that by holding on to Bitcoin, the U.S. is adding more different kinds of assets to its reserves and not just relying on gold and regular money.
So this Bitcoin reserve could help the U.S. if the dollar starts losing value, and we could even make money if Bitcoin goes up in value.
Right. People who like this idea point to things like the Bitcoin rainbow chart, which basically says Bitcoin is worth more than it's trading for right now and could go way up in price. It's all speculation, though, but that potential for growth is a big part of why this idea exists.
So let's say the U.S. creates this Bitcoin reserve and Bitcoin goes through the roof. How would that help pay off the national debt? Would we just sell those Bitcoins and use the money to pay down the debt?
That's pretty much it. By buying Bitcoin now at today's prices and hoping it goes up a lot in the future, the government could sell some of its holdings to make money and then use that money to lower the national debt.
That sounds pretty bold.
Yeah.
Are we really talking about wiping out the entire $35 trillion debt with Bitcoin, or is this more about making things a little bit better?
Even the biggest optimists will tell you Bitcoin alone isn't going to erase the entire debt. It's more about using it to lessen the burden.
So even if Bitcoin does amazingly well, it's not a cure. It's more like a small fix.
Exactly. And that leads us to another important point. Scale. Even if the total value of all the Bitcoins out there increased a ton, it would still be tiny compared to the national debt. It's not some magic solution.
I see. So it's not just about Bitcoin going up in price. It's about it going up like crazy to even make a small impact on the debt.
You got it. And even if that happened, there's the question of how the government would sell all that Bitcoin to pay off the debt. Would that flood the market and make the price crash? Would they be able to sell it fast enough to take care of their debts? These are things people haven't figured out yet.
Okay, so we've got the price going up and down like crazy, the scale issue. What else worries economists about using Bitcoin for the national debt?
One big thing is Bitcoin being decentralized. No government or central bank controls it, which is why a lot of people like it. But when it comes to national debt, that lack of control can be a real problem. Governments use things like interest rates and other stuff to control the economy. Bitcoin messes all that up.
So trying to use Bitcoin to deal with the national debt could actually go against how governments normally manage their finances.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the question of regulations. If the government put a ton of money into Bitcoin, they'd want some control over it. But that goes against the whole idea of Bitcoin being decentralized. It's tricky.
Like trying to mix oil and water.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. And it's not just about economics. It brings up bigger ideological differences. You've got People who love Bitcoin and those who believe in limited government, who see this as a way to be more financially independent, breaking free from central banks and government control.
So for them, it's not just about the debt. It's about using Bitcoin to change the whole financial system.
That's a big part of it, yeah. They think Bitcoin, with no one controlling it and a limited supply, could make a fairer and more open financial system.
But then you have economists like Justin Wolfers, who really didn't like Trump's crypto check idea, right? What are they worried about?
They say it shows people don't really understand debt or cryptocurrency. They think it's a big risk that could mess up the whole financial system. They're worried about the price going up and down, the lack of rules, and the potential for people to manipulate things.
It sounds like there's a huge difference of opinion between people who think Bitcoin could be a solution and those who see it as a big danger.
Absolutely. And it's not just some theoretical debate. This could have real effects on people's lives.
So how does all this Bitcoin and national debt talk relate to someone listening to this right now?
It all comes down to how much your money is worth, your savings, your investments. Inflation, which is made worse by government debt, makes that value go down over time.
So if the government is drowning in debt, and that's making inflation worse, everyone loses.
That's the worry. It creates a bad cycle. Bitcoin is supposed to protect us from inflation, but it comes with its own risks and unknowns.
So this isn't just some boring economics discussion. It actually affects our money and our future. But let's be real. If Bitcoin isn't the answer, what else can we do? How can we tackle this massive national debt and protect ourselves from the effects?
There's no easy answer, no magic wand to wave. It'll take a mix of strategies and some tough decisions. That might be a topic for another deep dive sometime.
Yeah, we should definitely look into that. But for now, I think it's time to wrap up this conversation about Bitcoin and the national debt. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it has. We went from this out there idea to a deep look at economics and ideological battles.
So what's the answer to Dennis Frank's question? Is paying off the national debt with Bitcoin a viable solution or just a fantasy?
Well, as we've seen, there are good points on both sides. Bitcoin could maybe protect us from inflation, give us more diverse assets, and even make a lot of money if it goes up in value. But there are also big risks. The volatility, the scale problem, the conflict with traditional economic tools, and the lack of clear rules.
So there's no simple yes or no answer.
Not at all. It's complicated, it's complex, and we need to think carefully about everything involved. But the important thing is that we're talking about it.
Because even if Bitcoin isn't the solution, it's making us think differently about the national debt, about the place of digital assets in our economy, and about the future of finance in general.
Exactly. It's making us question things, pushing us to come up with new ideas, and making us explore new possibilities. And that's valuable in itself.
I totally agree. And it shows how important it is to be informed, to be involved citizens. Understanding these complicated issues helps us make better choices for ourselves and our country.
You're absolutely right. We can't just rely on quick sound bites and headlines. We need to dig deeper, ask the important questions, and be open to different viewpoints.
So for our listeners who have been with us through all of this, what's the main takeaway?
I'd say it's this. The national debt is a huge challenge, but it's not impossible to overcome. And Bitcoin might be a piece of the puzzle, but it's not a magic fix.
I like that. Stay informed, stay involved, and keep learning.
And if you want to really dive deeper into all of this, I recommend checking out Dennis Frank's work. His website is cryptocracken.com, and he covers a lot of interesting stuff about finance, crypto, and the changing world of economics.
Sounds like a great place to go for anyone who wants to keep exploring this topic.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe one of our listeners will figure out how to deal with the national debt, with or without Bitcoin.
You never know. The future's full of surprises. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.